Normally we select plus trees in uniform stands. It's a tree that is superior in height, diameter. It has lighter branching than the average tree. It's got a straight stem, it's free from diseases, and it should be a tree that's producing cones. If you want to make a cross between two plus trees, these two plus trees could never meet and mate if we didn't shoot off branches. We graft them in a clone bank, put them in a clone bank or seed orchard, and then we can welcome them here in a good climate, and we have all the good trees brought together.
No other crop in history has been harvested with the same abandon as the forest crop. Every forest country in the world shows the sign of this history. Some have allowed their forests to become devastated, and others have learned to tend their trees. It's simply a matter of recognizing that trees are renewable, but not inexhaustible. Here in British Columbia, our forests are among the most important in the world, and we are now nearing the end of our accessible virgin trees. We are depending more on our second crop, but the importance of the harvest is increasing.
With this improved seed, improved stock, we should be able to get better survival. So maybe we can plant fewer seedlings per acre, or we can expect higher survival, so we don't have to go back and replant, which is very costly. If we cross these plus trees, plant out the seedlings and pick the very best in these plantations, and use these in a second generation seed orchard, we can get a gain of maybe 40 or 50%. There are provenance experiments where they have tried to find out how far you can move seedlings or seed from lower elevation to higher elevation, from north to south and so on. But there are limits. We cannot move trees up too high. We just have to find the right species.
This is 2 years old Douglas fir. We plant this on the southern slope and they like the light, and they like the moisture at the same time, and they can take the heat. What we are doing here, that is actually reforestation, planting trees. We are planting every acre. We want to get ahead of the game, and that's what we plant trees. On the western slope we plant the trees where they like the shade, and on the southern slope we plant trees where they like the sunlight. How many acres we plant a day, that's depend on the crew size. Regularly we got now about 18 guys who's coming up steady, working steady planting, and we put in about 12,000 trees a day, planting approximately 35-40 acres a day. But the survival depends very well on the planter. Because if the planter got a good heart and he likes the job what he's doing, and he's proud of his job, that certainly the survival rate is up to 95%. Some other people who doesn't see this kind of thing, they don't know how much that counts.
We have a greater variation in geography, climate, and biological makeup than the rest of Canada combined. Some of the best growing sites in the world are on the BC coast, where the rainfall is heavy and the mineral soil is deep. Weather is not very severe.
This is one other species, what we call mountain hemlock. That's a very hardy trees, and they really can stand the hard cold and the snow. And this is one other kind. There's a Douglas fir, 1 year old mudpacks. Mudpacks are coming 6 inches or 8 inches long. They are specially made from clay, vermiculite, fertilizer, and peat moss. And the root system is rolled in on this kind of mixture, and after they put it and bake it in the oven. And it's very important to use the right temperature, because 1 or 2 degrees higher temperature can kill the tree.
Throughout the rest of the province, weather becomes more severe. Many areas have almost no precipitation, and the mineral soil is thinner. The trees are smaller there and take longer to grow. Harvesting and planting methods vary with any area. The forest depends entirely on soils. If they are protected, the crop will continue to grow. Most of the second stands have been regenerated naturally after harvest. Natural stands take too long to regenerate, and because of little or no attention, these stands have grown very dense. This means the trees are too small, and in some cases there are not sufficient numbers of the right species. By the year 2000, we could be faced with a wood shortage.
What we're doing here is going into these burnt areas, or areas it's obviously been burnt or destroyed in other ways, and the little trees are coming back in really thick, so thick that they're just suppressing themselves. They're never going to go anywhere. In about 50 years they will grow to be fence rails. We cut down the obviously weaker ones, leaving the more desirable ones out into about maybe 3-4 foot spacing. Then we have another fellow comes along, and then he picks again from them and spacing them out to about 10 feet. These are natural trees, not planted trees, so therefore they're here by nature, and they should do possibly better than any planted trees. The only way to get them to come ahead and grow is to thin them and space them out, to give them room and light and nutrients and whatever they need, you know. I would say that 30 years from now, at the rate that we're cutting trees, if they don't manage the forest as somewhat in the respects of reforestation, like to get trees growing, regardless of how, if you're seeding them or thinning them or whatever, you're just going to be running out of trees. Well, I don't see any slackening up on the use of trees here. There's a certain amount of sawmills here now, and the only way these people can fight inflation is the same way as everybody else, a little more production. I would think that you're talking utilization here, that there's probably enough wood in small corners and whatnot like this, places that are not economical for the big operator to clean up. Small little corners, I'm talking 5-acre maybe lots, or blow down fringe areas, areas like this. That's, I mean, it's salvage type. In this district, if there's as many little mills left yet as there is big mills, there's only 5 big mills in Williams Lake, so if there'd be that many little ones still surviving here and there around, be lucky.
Comparing the wood up here to Vancouver Island, there's a tremendous difference in the size. We get sometimes 60 trees to load. It's all small. Even the fir, we have to take 10, 12 logs compared to maybe 4 or 3 in Vancouver Island.
Mills and wood supply problems can be documented according to the history of the harvest. It all started on the coast, where the trees were huge and accessible.
Well, with better management, as far as in the woods, the spacing program as far as planting, the greater, we're going wider and wider all the time. When I started in '67, we were planting about 8 by 8, and then we went 10 by 10 and 12 by 12. Now we're about to 12 to 14, eh, Dave?
Yeah, and looking at going a bit wider if...
Possibly going to almost 16 by 16, giving on different sites. And this way we're going to cut down the cost as far as going into spacing in future. And by doing this, we hope to have a quicker growth, you know, a greater yield in a shorter amount of time. We're looking at hopefully a, say, 45-year rotation instead of a 60-year rotation, something along that line. What we're doing is cutting them down to about 200 to 250 trees per acre. Thinning them out, taking the weak trees out, decadent trees, gibbled up trees, just more or less opening up the area for the well-established trees and giving them more nutrients, light, air.
Juvenile spacing is a thinning of the forest at about 15 years of age. This is the time when the trees are beginning to show their true characteristics. It is evident at this age which trees are the survivors, which ones will grow the tallest and straightest. The lesser trees are removed from the thick stands, leaving the best and easing competition for the elements. Intensive forestry can conservatively double the yield on these sites through planting the right seedlings in the right places and managing the forest through a progression of thinning and fertilization. The end result is more wood from less trees on the same land. The oldest managed stand of trees in the province is located on Vancouver Island. This experimental forest utilizes much more wood than a wild stand. There are less trees, less competition. The stems are straighter, the wood quality is better. Thinning was an important part of the success of this stand.
Just to illustrate, one of the items that we're trying to accomplish in thinning, of course, is to take advantage of the natural growth pattern of the trees. And with this particular specimen, which came from this stand, this serves to illustrate that, for example, in the first 30 years of growth of this particular tree, it grew out to about this particular point. In the last 30 years, it grew only to here. So probably in the neighborhood of 85% of the growth occurred in the first 30 years. Ideally, we could be in on a commercial thinning somewhere at this stage in development of this particular stand and enhance the growth over a longer period of time, which in fact would result in larger trees for any given time frame. Working with a new machine designed to pull material out, minimizing the damage to the stand. We've got to match the equipment to the timber. And generally, if we're working with small equipment, we're also talking about relatively low productivity.
In Sweden and Denmark, foresters depend on commercial thinning for almost 50% of their wood supply. A commercial thin means the wood that is removed from a stand during a thinning is commercially usable. This aspect of intensive forestry is the most practical, since the contractor can realize an income from the trees that are removed, and the final harvest will realize even more wood from less trees. This also means lower harvesting costs.
Some stands will not lend themselves to commercial thinning. A lot of things are required of a commercial thinning. Access, ground conditions, and frequently having a good site to work on. In other words, this particular site, which is a high site quality or very good soil conditions, we can manage this over a relatively short period of time. Now, by relative, I'm referring to a final harvest in this area at 70 to 75 years from the time that it started. But there's no doubt in my mind that we are going to be much more heavily dependent upon wood of this nature and small wood and a higher degree of utilization, by the year 2000.
Fertilization. It's expensive and effective. Fertilizer should be applied just after thinning for the best results. It boosts the nutrients and supplements the natural ability of the area to support trees. It results in increased volume, which is the objective of good forest management. Its application depends on factors such as the condition of the growing site, soil conditions, climate, species, age, and the objectives of the individual forester. When the lands that are suitable for harvesting are determined, there are other effects to think of and plan for. Insects, diseases, forest fires, crop failures of one sort or another take their toll. There are many other demands on the forests. Parks, municipalities, ecological reserves, hydro uses, ranchers and farmers, highways, industrial expansion. Just about everything we do in British Columbia affects the forests. Wood supply problems are not just academic. There are human implications, since just about every community in the province grew from and depend on the forest industry.
I've been in the mills now for 48 years. Mills and logging, and it seems to me as though they seem to be growing it just as fast as they're cutting it.
You got to have building materials. All the millions of people, you got to have it.
But there's some left, getting worse all the time.
We're going to have these logs around for quite a while.
I've been working here 20 years and I like to keep this job.
But I make my living in it, you know, the better be a good management there.
In April 1975, Dr. Vladimir Krajina, botanist and ecologist, addressed a public meeting in Kelsey Bay.
Ecological reserves will be serving for next several hundred years, if not 1,000 years, especially to the foresters, who will learn from them the prudence by which they should act. Now, up to now, foresters are harvesting forests which they never established by themselves because they were established by the nature. This is fine, it's excellent, our industries really growing from that, and very well. But we need to have excellent industry in the future. And to be able to have that, we need to know how nature operates, how nature operated, and not to make any mistakes.